man, trying to get cats to figure out what it is they need to do to stay focused. As we do every Monday, try to give you some jewels and dropping and stuff like that. So what I came up with this Monday, one of the things to do is to identify with what we call our enemies. And it's not what you would probably think when you think of an enemy. A lot of people usually think of people or persons, that they got to, compete with or combat themselves against. But the enemy is not always in the form of a human. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's in the form of things like that get in your way, or things that may help to stagnate you and stop that motivation from happening in the first place. All right, so we're going to go through a few of those things with me this Monday to help, talk about it and beat it up and bounce it off the wall. Like a can of paint. I like to throw the can of paint on the wall, splatter on it to see how that dripped down. All right, so I got the the well-studied, the well-educated man himself, celebrity by by default and admission. This is a good friend of mine, the whole family, the Sealy family, the late, great basketball all-star Amir Sealy's brother is Malik Sealy, but today we got the scholar. Please welcome to the show my main man, Amir Sealy. Bring him on in out of the backstage studio up to the forefront. Amir Sealy, ladies and gentlemen, joining us today. What's up, fam? Let's see, we got Amir. We got the picture there, but we don't have. There you go. There you go, bro. What up? Oh, your audio's still connecting. That's what's going on that end. If you can hear me, Amir, turn your phone sideways so you can get that full view and that full picture there, brother. His audio is connecting. Hope he's out in Vegas, so I hope he has a decent satellite. You know what you might have to do? You might have to bounce him out and bring him back in if it ain't connecting the right way. But me and Amir had a chance to talk off the air and kind of like pinpoint some of the things, like I said, the enemy that be in the way of you getting to that progressive state and you stay stagnant. You get stagnant because of some of the powers that be and things. What's up, Amir? How you doing, brother? You can't hear me? I see you. You're moving and everything, and the audio's connected. We gotta get your audio right.
Okay, there you go. I can hear you, brother. I'm sorry. My bad.
That's okay. Look, that's all right.
I'm still struggling with this new technology. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. All of this stuff, I got to look around. I'll be like,
Hey, look, I'm not mad at you. You know what's funny is my day been crazy. Speaking of new technology, so upgraded the phone, right? It's time, and that my whole day. Yeah, like when you're old cat, like technology be your whole damn day, right? Young cat, they smoke a blunt, they plug it up, they got all the apps. Now they out there in the universe doing dumb shit. You know what I mean? But us, we need a little more time to do what we got to do. So welcome to the show, brother. This is Motivation Mondays, our evening series right here. And you know strangers to what I do in the mornings in the early part of the day. So we're just recapping and doing it again. And I'm going to start off with what I started off in the morning, talking about those enemies, so to speak. And when you hear that phrase like that, people think, again, it's a person. No, your enemies could be something like my enemy. I had to find out over a decade ago from an actual psychic that told me stop procrastinating. Now, my initial reaction was like, yo, this lady don't even know me, yo. You know what I'm saying? First of all, you don't even know me. I'm like, I don't procrastinate. And I really felt like, she was way off base, and I don't know what you're talking about. She said, I could tell by your face, you don't agree. She said, you're not gonna agree right now. She said, but your ride home. She said, how long's your ride home? I said, about 20, 25. She said, by the time you get home, you'll understand what I'm telling you. And it actually took almost 45, 50 because of traffic that day. And she was absolutely right, bro. It started to flood back all these times and situations that I could have got stuff done immediately, and I didn't. And chunk of that that I could admit is it was because I just had that kind of leverage. You know what I mean? And I was abusing that kind of leverage. Like, you know, people would come with a project or come with an interview or something they need. Can you do it Monday? I'm like, nah, why would I do it Monday? You want me to do it Monday, so I'm gonna do it Thursday. You know what I mean? Like that whole cockiness of, you know what I mean? You had a luxury. You had a luxury of doing, you know, they needed you and you was gonna do it when you was gonna do it, and not just because they said Monday. You know what I mean? For what could be whatever reason. You're tired, you had a long weekend, whatever you're already foreseeing and thinking this. So procrastination, when she, you know, told me that was a truth. And now let me back up because I normally wouldn't just believe somebody that I just met like that. But this lady, you remember I was doing 98.7 Kiss FM, right? The morning show. So Jeff and us, we got to a point where we wanted to bring in a resident psychic. You know what I mean? Once or twice a week, come on, so the callers could call in and, you know, get information. Oh, you know, you're gonna, you know, get a good job or whatever. So we knew that one thing we all agreed on, whether you believe in it or not, we wanted it, whoever came in to at least sound believable. You understand what I'm saying? At least come off believable. Even, but this lady, we went through about 4 or 5 people. When this lady came in, she was the real deal. Holy, this lady came in, Amir, and said 2 things that blew me away. The first thing, she, you know, we put on the air. She took some calls, did whatever, and then she said, you know, when she was leaving out, she said, "Thank you. It was nice meeting everybody." Whatever. She stopped at the door, turned around, said, "Who has a red truck?" Right. And at the time, I had this, I thought it was like a more of a maroonish thing, but it was in the red family. It was a Range Rover, right? So I'm like, Jeff goes, "Man, your car's kind of red." I was like, "You think?" I was like, "Yeah, it's kind of red." She was like, "Oh, well, get rid of that as soon as possible. That's going to cost you a lot of money. You're going to have a lot of problems, you know, something electrical, whatever." And in my mind, I'm already going back and forth to the dealer with little electrical shit.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, that's what I said. I was like, wow. So I let it go. She comes back the next day. And again, before she's leaving, and you know, now I'm weary because I'm like, I don't want this lady to read me. You know, I'm real superstar. I don't want nobody to tell me nothing bad. Don't tell me shit. So at the end, she does the same thing. Stops, turns around, and says, she said, who's Louise? Like straight to me, like, who's Louise? Now, I got 5 sisters, right? One of my sisters' name is Louise, but growing up, we called everybody by their nickname. So it didn't grab me right away. I'm like, it took like a minute, and I was like, wait a minute. My sister Nugget, real name is Louise. So I said, I got Sister Louise. She said, oh, she said, you know what? And like grabbed my hand. You know how somebody holds your hand like in the hospital, tell you your mom is not gonna make it or some shit? Grab my hand like that shit, like fucking Marcus Welder, MD, and was like, she's like, she's very fragile. Answer her calls. And I'm like, what? She was like, answer her calls. She said, trust what I tell you. She don't want nothing, but the way she look at you is a matter of life and death.
Wow.
She was like, yo, your sister, the way she goes through it, you know, you are her ground place. Like, for whatever reason, you're the one that she calls. She's calling just to hear your voice. And she right too. My sister never stayed on the phone that long, you know. A long call might be 10 minutes, you know, but it's like, hey, what's up? You know, I love you, my brother, all that. But it was a point where, you know, I would not pick the call up, whether I went to do something else, I could call you back later, you know, that type of thing. So when this lady said to me, you have to pick her calls up, it's a matter of life and death. I said, wow. And I started picking the call up. And then the strangest thing is I can hear in those conversations in her voice, this lady was 100% like dead, like hit the nail on the head. So at that point, I'm like, yo, she's the real deal. And then she went into telling me about the procrastination or whatever. And she didn't know any specifics. I knew the specifics, but when she was telling me how I would go about it and what I would be thinking, she was telling me what I would be thinking right before I procrastinated something.
Wow.
So I tell people all the time that may be, everybody got different demons and enemies, and procrastination is a big enemy of progress.
Yes. I agree. I agree. That's wow. That's deep, man. It's so interesting because like you said, in this particular circumstance, you had a psychic that you were able to receive that information from. But I think, in a real sense, for everybody, I think just in general, people have signs and things that tell them what's going to happen or what possibly can happen. But to something that I've heard you say in other things that you've done, we ignore the flags. The flags come up, like forget that. I'm not even gonna pay attention to that. I'm gonna keep it pushing. I'm not even gonna allow that to sink in for a minute and everything. Meanwhile, everything in your body is telling you that probably is a legitimate situation that you need to think about, or at least give a moment to kind of figure out whether or not it moves in what your journey is trying to be. The fun part about what you're saying is, I know for me, mine's is partially procrastination, but more so than anything, something that you touched on earlier is just plain fear. And I think that fear for each and every one of us, like you said, also takes on different faces. But I think for the most part, for everybody, it takes on the face of, in your heart and your mind, making a situation worse than it can possibly or even really is. So like if you did something and it didn't turn out to even what your expectations are, you then make it far worse. Yo, so I super failed. This didn't happen. I don't know how I'm gonna, rebound from this. Meanwhile, in the grand scheme of things, it might have only maybe affected, 5 or 6 people, but it made 20 people feel great. But you only focused on the 5 or 6 that you thought, were the major parts of this. Meanwhile, there's 20 people who like, yo, I'm really glad that they touched on that. They don't know this, that walked me off the ledge today, or that helped me, get past or, get over a roadblock. And I think as you and I discussed a little earlier, again, one of the, main caveats of us as human beings is not understanding that our first food that we actually ingest is just our plain thoughts. Don't care what it is, whether you're thinking about something negatively or you're thinking about something positively, you're ingesting that. And then the power of that, though, is you then emanate that into the universe. And I say emanate it into the universe because, again, depending on what your religious belief is, people utilize different variations to say the emanation part, meaning prayer. Some people just intake it, and in their own mind, go to a Zen-like place and think about it, and then, release it. But in all facets of it, it's the same thing in the sense that you've now given that thought energy. And because it's been released into the universe, by universal law, has to respond. So now you have to be prepared for whatever that response is. And I think sometimes that's where, people kind of fudge the lines. We ask for things and we don't think that they're going to come as quickly as they do. And then they do. And then we're sort of like, oh, snap. I didn't expect that to happen that fast.
Right.
You ask for it. You ask for it. Once you ask for it, you can't control the time frame in which it's coming back to you. It's coming back one way or another. So we kind of have to, put ourselves in a position and in a space where we then process the fact that now it's come back. What are we going to do with it?
That's absolutely right. And you can't, like you said, careful what you wish for. Like you put the prayer in the universe or that hope, you know what I mean, and that energy. And if it circles back, are you ready? Or are you going to fall victim to your enemy, which is procrastination, and don't do nothing with it? You know what I mean? And remember earlier in this topic, we had a few women that was reiterating the same thing. But whenever we're on 5 cameras in the morning. So whenever a person or two on each different camera is saying kind of the same thing, you got to address that, because then that's a real issue, a real problem. And that word this morning that kept coming out was fear. You know what I mean? It was combined with self-doubt, fear and self-doubt. And what I was saying is that people who have a fear of doing something, or I have a fear because I fear failing, or I fear it not being successful enough, or fruit, I don't see the fruits of the labor, the ends don't justify the means, whatever the case may be. I always say like this: how is it so easy to have that fear in that place if you can have that fear in that place, shouldn't you also have the fear in what will happen of not doing it or not even trying?
You know, it's so funny. I think, you know, to your point, again, that's why I said the fear factor has so many facets to it. And, you know, it's such an interesting place to be for so many of us, because to your exact point, for those, like I said, who do step out on faith and, you know, do whatever they think, you know, they're called to do, or whatever they, you know, feel their spirit tells them to do, they either find success and failure, you know, whatever way they want to look at it. But
Right.
like you said, for those who don't make that leap, there's success and failure in that as well. The real question is whether or not you can rebound from it in a sense and in a way that now allows you to say, you know what, it's all good. I shared this with you earlier, and I, you know, share with, you know, those who are on the Zoom call now. When you first, you know, asked me to come on, even, you know, when we were talking about, you know, doing our other project, you know, when we White Wednesdays, in all seriousness, I had super fear from the standpoint of, in my heart and in my mind, thinking, who cares what a Mayor Sealy thinks? You got talent, you got all these, you know, great entertainers and, you know, all these beautiful people, you know, around the world going live and, you know, doing all these, you know, powerful things where they, you know, go in and they expound on, you know, what their ideologies are and, you know, how they feel and the way
Right.
that they see the world. And so many of us see the world in exactly the same ways, but we become, you know, like I said, fearful of expressing that because we think to ourselves, well, who really cares what I think or what I have to say? When the reality of it all is everybody is here specifically for that, to add their piece to the puzzle.
Exactly.
How big the puzzle or small the puzzle is, but whatever piece you put in, you added to it. And I think for so many of us, we don't really look at the world in that way. We start out that way. When you're a little kid, you run around, you know, everything is new to you, so you're touching everything, you know, you're saying anything, whatever. Then as you get older, you become a little more jaded, so then you know, you kind of back up off of, you know, saying certain things and moving in certain spaces because now you're worried about what other people are going to say and think. And the
Right.
fun or the interesting part of that is, in most cases, the people who really care about you, they're gonna know and understand where that's coming from anyway. Like your core tribe, your true people, they're gonna be like, oh, that's that person all day, every day. You might be just getting to know that now because maybe you're just being introduced to them. But I've known this person however many years or how, you know, however long amount of time, and that's all I've ever gotten from them. But people can't get past that because we seem to think that the minute we put something out there, the world, you know, then puts on their rose-colored glasses and they're like, I don't know. And we, you know, tend to worry about what we think the world is gonna say. And I'm like, who cares what the world says? The world's always gonna have opinions about everything. If you look at, like you said, the current state of the world right now, we in upheaval because of all these different opinions and, you know, the fact that some people are gravitating to this and other people are gravitating to that. And I'm like, okay, cool. As long as you're not forced.
I like that you said that because, you know, the piggy that I just said, with, you know, how that fear can translate and work its way into self-doubt, right? That's exactly what the problem is. That's exactly what self-doubt is. I don't think self-doubt is born in oneself. I think self-doubt is grown. I think you care too much for other people and what people may think or say or judge you, and they plant that seed. They plant that little seed of doubt, and that's all you need. All any human need is a seed to be planted. Our brain gonna do the rest. Our
Yes.
worries, our what ifs, our self-doubt. Now that you got it, you done caught it. It's contagious. It's the coronavirus self-doubt, 19, right? So
Yeah.
now you caught it. Now that seed then started to grow with you because your mind gave it that much thought pressure. Now, I think what our problem is, we are a people of bouncing stuff off other people. And you got to be wary. That's why I always say, you should know your circle. Because in my circle, everybody that I know who I could tell what to. I also borderline know what to expect from them when I tell them what.
Those responses, yeah.
I know people's response. So I know that this guy is my friend. I want to tell him when the thought is an inception. the inception of the thought, hey man, look what I thought of, this is gonna be crazy. But then there's another guy who I'm not telling him at the same time I tell him. I gotta wait to show him when I get it up and running. So I come to him when it's up and running because I give him less to hate, less to verbalize in the form of hate. You know what I mean? So I think people take that back, that little seed, because, hey man, I'm thinking about doing this. What you think? Blah, 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 blah. And for whatever reason, you never know. It's different reasons why people hate on each other, you know, or despise each other or look to judge each other. Everybody got their own ulterior motive. All I do know is when that happens and that seed is planted, your brain and anxieties can make that a full-blown tree.
Wow. You know, and it's funny that you said it's a seed planted. You know, my mom and I, talk all the time. And one of the things she recently said to me, which, has really stuck out to me now, she said, as parents, and much more so, for any ladies who are on the line, my mom, is not trying to make one more capable than the other. But she says one of the things that we're supposed to do as parents is we're supposed to instill that light, that love, that ability to not be fearful in our children. And that stems from everything from telling your kids they're smart, they're wonderful, they're beautiful, they're strong, all these different things that sometimes we don't necessarily hear. And I mean, from this standpoint, I know my generation, me and you in the same generation, coming up, sometimes you hear stuff like, well, money doesn't grow on trees. Okay, which meant, trying to get certain things that you might want, you might not get it right now because of, the fact that your parents have to figure out, from a logistical standpoint, how to make it happen. But it planted a seed in you that now, even as an adult, you kind of be like, well, shit, money don't grow on trees, man. I'll get that when I get it, or whatever the case may be. And I think, in a real sense, this is what helps some of us get beyond our fears. When you have parents who are nurturing, when you have siblings, as well, because, a lot of us have siblings, so you got your brothers and sisters who also take the time to, big you up or to, sow things into you. And all of that is a major part of allowing us to grow into ourselves and to become the forces that we're all supposed to be. That poem that's recited in Coach Carter, the one about the light, my light shining should never dim somebody else's. I don't know the whole, poem, but I always think about that now more so than any other time, because I feel as though that's really what people are doing. We're shrinking as opposed to turning on the light in each and every one of us, so that now it's helping to turn the light on in somebody else, whether you believe it or not, because somebody can see you get past something in their heart, their mind, they feel like they can get past something. And that's big. You know what I mean? That rippling effect is beyond measure. And I think once people start to really embrace that and understand that, your issue or your situation, somebody else is dealing with it. And theirs may be 10 times worse, quiet as it's kept. But the point is, because you brought it up and because you brought it to light, now that made them breathe a little easier. Maybe that, took some of the pressure off of them. And that's huge for all of us. You know what I mean? And that's why, I keep telling you, with the platforms, that you've been doing, like you said, since this whole thing started, and giving people the opportunity to get on and express themselves, and not, just, for any other reason than because we need to express ourselves. What else do we have? Your driveway drinking, I think about it all the time. I smile at myself because, I've been saying, I said, everybody keeps saying, I don't know why people are in such a rush to get back out there. And most people are in a rush to get back out there because, unfortunately, they don't have friends. They don't have people who are checking up on them. May not have who are encouraging them and telling them, hey, man, even though you think that this is a small thing, this could actually be a lot larger than, what you perceive it to be, because there are a number of people who, feel that way too. We doing so much of, hiding behind masks and, I'm not talking to anybody and the world is shut off. And I'm looking at folks like, shut off from what? I'm like, look, the whole entire world, as I explained to people, and like I said, this is no knock to anybody. We spent 50 years, I spent 50 years on this planet, never having to wear a mask, never having to hide behind anything. Right. I get to my 51st year, and now y'all want to tell me supposedly this is what the world is supposed to look like, and this is how we're supposed to move and shake? Hey, your smile, the smile right there, to see the happiness in your eyes. I can't when this is happening, I can't see all of
Right.
that. And that's
You
not
can't see it.
saying you can't get that same energy. You can't draw that same, amount of love from one another. Now, do you have to protect yourself? As in anything, you always have to protect yourself. That's a large part of what this whole journey called life is about, is protecting yourself. But in your
Right.
protection, like you said, you figure out your tribe. Okay, these are the people I can go to for this, people I can go to for that, people I can go to for this. These are people I don't even mess with. I let them, hang around just because they want to hang around. That's cool. And we're going to keep it pushing. But once you, got that whole circle and you understand your circle.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, my thing is, you as grown men and women, we get to an age where, God forbid, you haven't been paying attention to this whole movie. What motivation is about is reminding people that life is a movie. You understand what I'm saying? The only difference is your life. Each individual is supposed to control their own movie. You know what I mean? This is not, when you go to a real movie set, there's somebody there that gave everybody a role to play because it's that person's movie. Your life is your movie. So you better pick the part that you're going to be in it. Because if you're sitting around in real life, in your life movie, and you're waiting for somebody to tell you your part, you already picked it. Little do you know, there's followers and there's leaders. And if you didn't already pick to lead, guess what role you get? You the follower.
Yeah.
You the follower.
I absolutely. It's so interesting because when you put it as simple as that, you think that people would catch it and that would turn on the light and people will go, wow.
Not always. Nope.
There's so many people who still just like.
is a person right now looking at this thing going, I don't even go to the movies. There's a person right now, you get that analogy, but there's a person right now that shit went, and they just sitting there looking at you. I don't even like the movies like
that. And the fun part about, to what you said about being a director, again, that's why I said it goes back to your thoughts, because once you control your thoughts, your movie becomes so crystal clear and so dope that there's nothing that you want to do more than to continue to write your movie. Like literally, you wake up every morning like, okay, we got a new episode. This episode is going to be even better than what yesterday's was or whatever. And I can't wait to get it started. But we got so many people who get caught in whatever, unfortunate circumstances happen, and they can't get up past that. And you're like, get up, man. Like I tell everybody, it's like when you have a baby, the baby falls down. If you don't run over there and you don't start crying and get all crazy, the baby will get right back up, moving and shaking or whatever. But if you run over there, oh my God, and you won't do it. The baby
now the baby's hysterical, right? You done made the baby hysterical because you're punk ass. But I mean, this is what I'm saying here. This is a good point that we're on right now. So here's what I don't get. Like we just talked about followers and leaders. Now, what about that person that has that quality, built to lead, but they don't want to lead? That person that you ever be at that job and they come in there and be like, hey man, you're doing so great in so little time. We're going to give you this promotion. We're going to promote you to supervisor or VP or whatever. And motherfucker, nah, because then I got more responsibilities. Yeah, it's a few more dollars, but I don't want to be in charge of Charles and having Charles make sure he's on time with the projects and all that. You got a clump of those people everywhere you go, bro.
You do. It's so interesting you say that. I always liken it to life and sports. So for instance, in sports, I always say, like you got your franchise player and then you got your role players. So your franchise guy, he goes out there, he gets everybody, I'm gonna just use LeBron for this scenario. So any LeBron haters who might be on here, it's all good. Don't worry about it. But I'm gonna use LeBron for the moment. Because to the point that you're making about being a leader, I think one of the other things that we have to place in our mind is two things. One, there are always different kinds of leaders. And two, there's different kinds of ways that people handle leadership. So when you take a guy like LeBron, who always everybody says, he's not a closer, he's not a finisher, he didn't do this in his career, he didn't do that in his career. Oddly enough, though, every place he's gone, first and foremost, they've gone to the chip. So either you are great at doing something, or they cheating like crazy for you because every time you but I'm using him because during the game he sees talent on the baseline. Talent ran off a pick that I set for him. You and I didn't even know we were going to even set that pick. You cut to the other side. He finds you with a no-look pass for an easy, layup, and we like, what the fuck? How did he even see that? We didn't even call that. We didn't talk about the timeout.
Right.
I tell people when you look at sports teams and when you look at your friends, it's the same way. You go out to the club and you got one of your boys. He goes at everything. He's bagging all the baddest chicks in there. He's on top of everything. You got your quiet boy. He comes away. He got 3 numbers. You look and you like, I didn't even see him talk to anybody. When did that happen? You got your other man. All he does is complain. He's on the team. It's always like, yo, ain't nothing really go down for me this time, man. Every time y'all bring me out, hit or miss for me. So I liken it to sports and, the same thing. So I think teams are set up that same way. But as far as leadership is concerned, I think what tends to happen is, like I said, as human beings, we unfortunately tend to look at one form of leader, and then we wish or assume that everybody could and should be that kind of leader. When Michael Jordan thing came out, everybody, Mike would take Michael and Kobe and, add it to the LeBron conversation. This person, everybody's like, they need to be more like Kobe and need to be more like Mike. Kobe and Mike are Kobe and Mike. There's a reason why those two guys are who they are. If everybody tried to be carbon copies of everybody else, this be a boring place, first and foremost. But secondly, you start to learn how there are other ways to be able to influence people, other ways to be able to do things that maybe those guys don't have. Because for all of the props and accolades that we give Jordan, that we give Kobe, everybody, or there seems to be players who go, yeah, but they was a fucked up teammate. I ain't really like that dude, or whatever the case may be. Meanwhile, the nice guy who's leading by, just being a cool dude, everybody's like, nah, I fucks with this nigga hard. So everywhere he is, that's where I am. And I think what we have to do is figure out what leadership styles, what different things work for us, and then, assimilate ourselves to those things versus just seeing or thinking to ourselves, there's only one way to kind of get things done. Do you follow?
Right. No, that's a great point. You're absolutely right with that. And that's why I said, going by, everybody can be a different leader in their own form and fashion. Again, we talked about this on a different show when we were talking about police brutality, and we got into talking about changing the cops and, it's a bunch of good people, let them be cops. Yeah, but people, you understand something. They may not want that job. It ain't no different than the guy in a leadership role. He may not want a leadership role. Not that he's a bad person, not that he's an evil person. He want to use his time to stagnate people and make them go in reverse instead of progressing. But something simple like they just don't want the responsibility. They just don't want to be in charge of certain things. They want to come, clock in, do the work that they comfortable doing, and call it a day. And that's that. You know what I mean? And I get that. But all I'm saying is, no matter what role you pick one in your movie. It's your movie. Don't let somebody hand you out the roles. How are you the producer, director, writer of your own script in life, but somebody put you in a role, in a position? That's an oxymoron in a sense. That's a hypocritical whole statement right there. Like, it doesn't make sense. So whatever you choose, I think people, on the motivational tip, you want to be a follower, be the best follower you can be. You might want to be a follower, or what do you call it, the VP instead of the president, to just give advice and just, what do you call it, the people that come in and
consult.
come and help. What do you say?
Consult. People come in and consult.
I just want to come in and consult. I just want to come in and help the company point you in the right direction. You're still getting a check, but that's the way they chose to lead. To them, that's leading. To them, giving you my 2 cents to give it to the leader so he can know a direction to go in or how to go about it. To me, that was me doing my leadership. You know what I mean? So I respect that. You know what I mean? Now, another thing that can be a demon that could work against you and try, because all you're trying to do is be motivated. You know what motivation is? Motivation is September 12th, Roy Jones Jr. fighting Mike Tyson. Two old dudes coming out of retirement saying, well, you know what? We can give a fight. You know what I mean? And I'm not fighting this young dude. You're not fighting that young dude. We're fighting each other. But that's motivation.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So one of the things that I tell people, and this is another killer with a lot of people, I always tell people all things in moderation. And I mean all things. And I use myself as an example when we did the show early in the day. I'm sitting there like I am right now. I haven't even made my drink for the day. I'm still in my water zone, right? Hydration. So if I was to get up, first thing, wake up and throw that tequila in the cup, what am I doing? I'm going crazy. You know, that's when those things become what we call vices and problems. You know, when you can't do something in moderation, all things in moderation.
Yes.
You like to play basketball? Fine. But you still got to play in moderation. You can't just overdo it because, you know, first of all, you're going to get mad injuries if you do it way too much. You know what I mean? You're going to shoot your load to the point where you done did 200 scrimmages, right? So now it's time to play the game. You ain't got the energy for the game.
Yeah.
You done put your energy to the scrimmages. So they wondered why dude ain't dunk one time. He's wide open. He finger roll. He don't have it. The legs are shot. The springs are shot. All things in moderation, because if you do things in moderation, your third eye stays open to what's around you. So when you move at that pace and you're doing things, all things in moderation, you see other things. It's like a quarterback. A quarterback is the position in football. Again, it's a leadership role, right? But coaching in football is bright enough to know that we can't throw the ball every down. Yes, what I'm saying. That's why the positions in football are what they are. Everybody needs to play these positions. I got a running back here so that the defense don't know when I'm going to throw the ball or run the ball. If they took away the thought process of all things in moderation, and you got a football team and that's all they do, they throw every down, that quarterback is going to die.
Yeah. His arm's going to get tired as hell. Yeah.
And then he might get 5 yards from the Super Bowl game-winning play, and he can't throw the ball 5 yards. Why? He threw 747 passes today. So the ball ain't even going 5 yards at this point. What I'm saying to people is you have to, no matter what it is you're doing and how you're doing it, you have to take your time and think to yourself, because a lot of things are double-edged swords. Yes. Alcohol. I'm a social drinker. You brought up driveway drinking. Driveway drinking, the good thing about it is, like we said, we get to socialize. Socializing gets to keep your brain in a certain sanity level that you can get things done. Now, that's for whatever amount of time that is, whatever day of the week that is. That's not every day 12 to 12. You're trying to burn the insides. I already told you, tequila is the hand sanitizer for the insides. You don't want to drink this shit 12 to 12, but you do want to have your dose, you know, every other day if you can, just to keep the monster away. But my point is, I think I see a lot of people in my line of work that didn't know how to do that. How many times have you been to a show? And I'm just going to talk about entertainment in general, where a person's motivation is cut from the kneecaps because they didn't moderate how they was doing a certain thing. Could be weed, could be alcohol, could be other drugs, could be fraternizing. You know what I mean? You know, could be out all the hours of the night. Perfect example is Mike Tyson. I watched the documentary of Tyson that's on Hulu in his own words. And one of the things I found fascinating in there was and you know, Tyson probably always gets the question, 2 things or 3 things he's never going to outlive probably in questions is, did you rape the bitch? You bit the nigga ear off? And how the fuck you lose to Buster Douglas, right? So the Buster Douglas thing, he's explaining how he got stagnated in his motivation and how we lost that fight. So for all these years, the rumor was, oh, he didn't train for this fight. He was out partying. That's why Buster beat him. But Mike went into depth to explaining. He said, I didn't train for the five last fights. He said, I had 4 fights before Buster. I didn't train for none of them either. He said, but I beat the shit out of all 5 of those guys. He said, and 1 or 2 of them had already beat Buster Douglas. So I figured, what do I need to train for? I did beat the hell out of the dudes who beat the dude. Wow. And he said, looking back at that, that's where he went wrong. Same thing with Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor said, listen, when I stopped being nervous, he said, I should have knew that was the flag that everything was starting to go downhill. I was doing too much drugs. Too much. He said, I'm coming in and I'm not even thinking about it, I'm not worried about it. Just stand-up comedy is not that kind of job. It's the kind of job you worry every time. And that's how you know you are on the right track. He said, but trust me and believe. In his book, Prior Convictions, he said, when you stop worrying, when you stop being scared, he said, now you need to be scared.
You know, it's amazing how, you know, when you hear other people who have gained notoriety or success, you know, depending on how you're looking at it, how interesting that is. I remember being a young person, even till this day, to your point about being nervous about things. I'm always nervous about stuff. My hands, you know, sweat a little bit, you know, get the little butterflies in my stomach. And I don't care what it is. Even right now, I'm on here with you, and believe it or not, my hands are sweating. So I'm kind of laughing about that. But I understand what both those gentlemen mean by that. And I think, you know, like you said, as far as motivation and fear, that's why we really have to, you know, have these conversations, because when you start hearing other people who you assume maybe don't have those kinds of moments, and then you hear that they do, you're like, wow, okay. Because Mike Tyson, you know, as far as we're concerned, is one of the baddest men on the planet, bar none. Like, you know, you can talk all this tough stuff you want. I remember specifically, we gave one party at the Roxy. This was, you know, one of the many parties we gave, but we gave a party at the Roxy. And I remember my friend's sister went up to him and said, you know, why'd you bite Buster Douglas? And true story telling, all of us did like we were all standing there, everybody did the turn around and walk away like, he about to hurt that girl. ain't nothing we could do to help her. She on her own on that one. But he did, you know, he smiled and laughed it off or whatever the case may be. But in our mind, he was like, why would you ask him that question? Don't ask him that, you know. Like, we don't need him. This is a dude whose knockout power is in both hands, love. Even if we rush him, he's liable to knock at least 6 of us out before the group can get to him. How do you explain it? The only cool thing about it is back then, obviously, we didn't have, you know, cell phones and all that stuff, so nobody could have filmed it. But that's not the point. The point still, right. That's not the point. That time you got knocked out at the Roxy, son, I was there.
That's hilarious, but no, that's real. That's real. Yeah. I love to read, so I do like to read. I find it very motivating to read other people's story, like people with impact, you know, in this world. You know, people who left some sort of legacy or entrails that we can follow and we can take something from. And I would say like 80% of the time, you pick a book up, you get some good jewels out of it. Every now and then you'll get a book that you don't walk away with nothing. Like, you know what I mean? Like Prior Convictions, a lot of jewels. Even Red Fox book, a lot of jewels. You know, he had a lot of financial woes, especially towards the end, you know, in the middle to the end that caught up to him, that left him messed up, you know, but a lot of jewels in the book, nevertheless. Even Cosby's book, like the book Cosby, phenomenal. You know, you get a lot of jewels. Damon John from FUBU, I always recommend that book to people, you know, the Power book. You know, he's telling the story of FUBU. And we were cut from a different cloth. I could say that about a lot of people's books and that came up in the same kind of generation that we did. You know, when you look at the hustle that went behind Richard Pryor, the hustle that went behind Cosby, like a lot of people don't realize Cosby's hustle part. You know, everybody picks him up along I Spy and then some. But to really go back to see the hustle, the work that was put in there, and some of the what do you call it, silent stuff that
Mhm.
they wasn't able to publicize. Like in the civil rights movement, the powers that be sat down and would have these meetings of how they were going to attack this civil rights thing. And Cosby wanted to be on the front lines with Dick Gregory and all of them. And they wouldn't allow him. Harry Belafonte and all those guys wouldn't allow him because he had crossed over and he was our most powerful tool in the world of crossover and entertainment. So they allowed him to use his money to fund a lot of things. You know, they needed motel rooms everywhere they went. They needed food for the soldiers and the marchers and, you know, transportation. There was a lot of stuff that he was part of funding, you know, but intentionally, he wasn't allowed to be on the front line. They wanted him to be, you got that image, you got that squeaky clean image. They don't even suspect your role in this. You stay over there. We need you to keep that door open. You understand what I'm saying? And perfect example was, just to give you a little insight, uh, the Audubon. When you look at what happened to Malcolm X, there was supposed to be other speakers there, Dick Gregory and then some, to speak that day. But they had got it in wind of something may go down. So some people take the interpretation, oh, they didn't show up, they stood Malcolm up for the speech. No, that's not what happened. They made a conscious decision in a conference called that, you know what, we got to cover our ass. If it does go down today, we all can't be in the same place. They can't get us all at one time.
Yeah.
That would set us back so many years and so much power if we're all in one place and it does go down today. So these are little things that were going on that at the time the public wasn't privy to. So you're just seeing things and assuming and putting your own, you know, two and twos together. But the powers that be, when you read these books and these storylines of these people, again, I apply the hustle and motivation of the Damon Johns. And then you read like a book like Jermaine Dupri. And I like Jermaine Dupri, he's a friend, but the book had really, you didn't have nothing to take away from the book. You know, it was a cutesy story and, you know, this, that, and the third, but it wasn't any entrails left for somebody coming behind you to pick up and go, okay, wow. Like I learned equity from Damon John's book, right? They created their own equity in growing FUBU because they got money off of the potential of money. And that's what banks were looking for. If you need to go to the bank, grab $400,000 real quick, the bank wants to know, like, why would we give you $100,000? But they had orders. They went to Magic, remember Magic in Vegas, when they do the Magic shows, the fashion.
Yes.
They went there with samples. And the story is so crazy because, you know, it's like 4 or 5 of these guys.
Yes.
And it's more than that when you put their people and workers together and everything. And they wasn't really invited to the Magic thing. They kind of got in there and infiltrated it. But all of those dudes flew out to Vegas on buddy passes, right? They didn't have a bunch of money and hotel. They all slept in one hotel room, floors, middle of the beds, a couple of beds. And all they had, you know, the carts you get when you're in a hotel,
Yes.
when you take the bags and take it to the room, they put all the samples of clothes, because all they had was samples. Had 1 or 2 of each thing. Put all that up on there, kept it in the room the whole weekend, took it down, got to Magic and, you know, showed everything. What their beginning came is because a ton of orders from stores like Macy's, you know what I mean, and the Bloomingdale's and all of these clothing stores and Jimmy J's and all that stuff placed all these orders. They had, I think he said they had just over maybe $1 million or close to $1 million in orders.
Wow.
But they don't have this stuff yet. They just took the orders, but they were able to take the orders to the bank
And leverage it. You know, it's funny, man, you know, that you even bring that up. You know, you talk about your different stories. you know, because you followed us. We had a necktie business, and quiet as is kept, that's how the necktie business came to fruition. Malik had lost his playbook on the train or some foolishness, and somehow it got to Howard Stern, and Howard Stern, you know, got on his show and made this whole big brouhaha about Malik losing his playbook and all this stuff. And, you know, since we, you know, talking about sayings, you know, he said we took lemons and we turned it into lemonade.
Right.
Decided we should try, you know, doing a neckwear line. And we did. And the neckwear line actually was really good. It was, you know, in and along the same time as FUBU and Walkaway and Kalkanai.
I remember that.
The only reason why we weren't able to definitively sustain it is because once we introduced to the market what they call now signature ties, which are things that are like, for instance, your logo, Just Comedy, or a football person, an image of a football person, or a soccer image. Those are called, I forgot the exact name of them. So when we brought that to the market, all of the other big name designers then jumped on the bandwagon that we brought. They, up to that point, they were doing, you know, the regular bow ties that you always see, the striped ones and this and that and the third, but nobody had anything which would be called a signature bow, you know, a signature tie. So once we brought that to the market, Donna Karen and, you know, all the other major, Tommy Hilfiger and all of them, then started doing what we did. And because we were the smallest name at the time, you know, everybody gravitated to them. So it made it a little harder for us to maintain, you know, a hold on the market. But in that, you know, moment, and to your point, it taught you about hustling. It taught you about, you know, how fragile the, you know, ego can be. And this is why I said, you know, you go back and to something I said earlier about not understanding how impactful even the smallest thing that you do can be to the bigger picture. Because like you said, you might have introduced it to the market and nobody maybe have heard of it, but by the time it's all said and done, everybody else is doing something that you actually introduced to everybody because nobody knew that you're the one who introduced it. So I most certainly understand what you mean, you know, with what you said about the FUBU thing, man.
And I remember that line. I think that was dope as hell, man. I just wanted to say real quick, bro. I mean, you have to. One thing I do is I have an eye and an ear, you know what I mean, for good stuff. And we've been going back and forth on a lot of different stuff in these past few months. You got it, man. You got it, man. You are the ultimate wingman right now. You understand what I'm saying? I appreciate you coming and popping on Motivation Mondays again with me, man. Thank you very much.
Nah, man. Like I said, man, it's my pleasure, T, man. You know, in my heart, in my mind, you know, I've been trying to, you know, do something, whether it be this, some music, whatever. I just know that I like speaking and I like giving my opinion and all that kind of stuff. So I'm, you know, and however it resonates with folks, I'm thankful and mindful and happy that it does, because in my heart of all hearts, like I said, I think we all have voices, and as long as you allow the world to hear your voice, that's all that really matters. What they do with it, it's up to them. You can't do anything about that.
Exactly. Well, thank you again, my brother Amir Sealy, ladies and gentlemen. In closing, just to recap real quick, please pay attention, open your third eye, and try to understand these demons, these enemies, and these obstacles. And it don't have to be people. Sometimes it can be people, but if you're open to it and seeing that sometimes the people is you, it's just the things that get in your way. Procrastination being one of them. Yeah, it could be people, could be haters. You know what I mean? It could be you. Maybe you are not doing the right thing in all things in moderation. Maybe that's a bad format for you. Maybe the fear of failure is one of your enemies. And maybe that seed was planted and turned into self-doubt because you listened to somebody who told you you couldn't have it. You couldn't do it. Couldn't cut it. Wasn't going to happen. Either way, keep these things in mind going forward and stay motivated, my people. Till next Monday, which will be a motivational Monday. Deuces. Everybody be safe out there.
You are tuned into WEMS Radio, where we are bringing light back to the industry.